Another woman who fought for our rights to vote, Ida B. Wells, 1862-1931. Ida B. Wells, born in Mississippi in 1862, is perhaps best known for her work as a crusading journalist and anti-lynching activist. While working as a school teacher in Memphis, Wells wrote for the city's black newspaper, The Free Speech. Her writings exposed and condemned the inequalities and injustices that were so common in the Jim Crow South: disenfranchisement, segregation, lack of educational and economic opportunity for African Americans, and especially the arbitrary violence that white racists used to intimidate and control their black neighbors. Ida B. Wells' insistence on publicizing the evil of lynching in particular won her many enemies in the South, and in 1892 she left Memphis for good when an angry mob wrecked the offices of the Free Speech and warned that they would kill her if she ever came back. Wells moved north but kept writing about the violence and organizing on her behalf many civil rights causes, including women's suffrage. In March 1913, Wells prepared to join the Suffrage Parade throughout President Woodrow Wilson's inaugural celebration. At that time, organizers asked her to stay out of the procession. Some of the white suffragists, it seems, refused to march alongside black people. Early suffrage activists at that time had generally supported racial equality. In fact, most had been abolitionists before they were feminists, but by the beginning of the 20th century, that was rarely the case. In fact, many middle-class white people embraced the suffragist cause because they believed that the enfranchisement of their women would guarantee white supremacy by neutralizing the black vote. Ida Wells joined the march anyway, but her experience showed that many white suffragists' inequality did not apply to everyone. Wells continued to fight for civil rights for all until she died in 1931. Another woman who fought for our rights, Frances E.W. Harper. At the time in America when the majority of black people were enslaved and women were rarely encouraged to have political opinions, much less share them in public, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper became a genuine celebrity as an orator, second only to abolitionist Frederick Douglass in terms of prominent African American writers in her era. The poet, essayist, and novelist frequently went on speaking tours to discuss slavery, civil rights, and suffrage, and donated many of her proceeds from her books to the Underground Railroad. Born to free black parents in Maryland, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was often orphaned while she was still very young. She was raised by her aunt and uncle, William Watkins, an abolitionist who set up his own school, the Watkins Academy for Negro Youth. Harper attended the rigorous academy, began writing poetry as a teenager, and later became a teacher at the schools in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Barred from returning to Maryland by an 1854 law mandating that free blacks who entered the South would be forced into slavery, she moved in with her uncle's friends, whose home served as a station on the Underground Railroad. In the latter half of the 19th century, Harper was one of only a few black women included in the growing women's rights movement. In 1866, she delivered a famous speech at the National Women's Rights Convention in New York, in which she urged white suffragists to include black women in their fight for the vote. During the debate over the 15th Amendment, which Harper supported, she and other abolitionists split with white suffragist leaders like Susan B. Anthony and helped form the American Women's Suffrage Association. In 1896, Harper and others founded the National Association of Colored Women Clubs, which advocated for a number of rights and advancements for Black women, including the right to vote. So, ladies and gentlemen, we see a little brief history and the faces of the women who fought so that this generation and onward, and even their generation and onward, will be able to vote without any hindrance. So at this time, we're going to touch on the importance of voting. Voting is the way of public participation. Either a person votes or stands as a representative themselves in the elections. These are the two ways of involvement in politics. Every person has a responsibility to choose the right representative. If you do not vote, you are shrinking your duty by letting others take responsibility for you. When a person votes for someone, they have carefully studied the aspects of the nominee to be qualified to handle that role. In that sense, voting is an informed decision. Another importance of voting, voting is also critical because all the candidates feel a responsibility that various voters are voting for them and they should do their best to provide them the best services once they get elected. Voting is also very beneficial because the countries who do not have a voting process in them are not progressing in various fields, but other countries are reaching new heights. Another importance of voting. On the other hand, voting can also be done to keep certain undesirable elements out of power by voting against them. When more people start voting, better candidates start surfacing as they know that elections are no longer a matter of random chance. Thank you. When the candidates announce their agendas, voting ensures that the items on the agenda will at least be presented for discussion and, if possible, for executing the plans. If you or one person or several groups are frustrated about the corruption or other kind of problems in his or her own country or your own country, voting is the process by which we can choose a better option next time. Another importance of voting. Voting is not just a right of an individual, but also our duty. When you vote, you are taking responsibility for running the government the way you want it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for just taking the time to listen to the importance of voting and to get acquainted with a little brief history and description of the women that fought for rights to vote. So, Dr. April, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon. What an awesome, awesome presentation. Thank you for taking us through the history, or we should say the herstory of women who have fought for our right to vote, and even across racial lines, as in Lady Ida B. Wells. And so we stand on tall shoulders who have fought for that right. And I hope that tonight, before we conclude, that you realize that as women, we do have a voice and we do have power and we are able to exercise that. Well, I'm excited to introduce our next presenter, Her Excellency, Reverend Dr. Beauque Barnley, who is the Deputy Director General of Women's Affairs for WOLMI-I.C.C. She is the co-founder and senior pastor of Jesus Banquet Ministry. She's a speaker and life coach. She received Honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters, Doctorate of Divinity by SICA International University and Seminary. She is also a UN Peace Ambassador of WOLMI, and she has a passion for fashion. So ladies, you know, it's about to get real. Dr. Beauque.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Just what an honor and a privilege to be in your midst and to hear from such wonderful ladies. I have been educated and enlightened and encouraged by Dr. Ripley and Dr. Sharon so far, and I was really touched by His Excellency, Dr. Finn, showing up here to support us and the insights that he gave to the Word of God and the stand of women and the power of women. And I keep saying it, but I mean it from my heart that we could never thank you enough, Dr. Finn and his precious wife, Sharon, for these opportunities that you guys keep giving us to do the work of God in ways that we would otherwise not have been able to do. So thank you so much. And so with that, I just want to go straight to what I have to talk about. It says voter registration. And I really thank God for Dr. Ripley and Dr. Sharon. They've covered so much ground. So I'm just going to be quick to get on with it. We all know now why we should vote and the history of the blood that was shed, the fights, and everything that was done to help us vote. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is that in the United States of America and possibly in other countries, the first thing to do is first register to vote. So if you have not registered to vote, you need to do that. And the other thing is that why register to vote? There is a reason, because registering to vote helps to ensure that they have a reliable list of voters and it ensures a fair election. So that's another reason why we need to vote. And it's wonderful to know that, in some states, you may be going through something now, you haven't yet registered, there's still hope for you to register, because some states even offer same-day registrations. And most times people can even register right at the polling stations, And I've included there a website, www.usa.gov, which it's a website that will answer all your questions that you have concerning registration. And there are even links that and numbers that you could call and speak to people with other questions that you might have. Another way to go about is that most of the candidates, usually there are community drives that are done by candidates and parties and stuff like that. And you could go there too to get more information. Now, I want to talk quickly about the common reasons why people do not vote. Number one on the list is that they dislike politics. Yeah, we've all heard that. Number two on the list is that they believe voting would make a difference. Now, I know that for a fact, coming from a country where as kids, we were taught that Cameroon was a democracy with one party. How can it be a democracy with one party? So it didn't matter what you thought. Your vote doesn't make a difference. There's just one party anyway, so I get that. I don't know what nation you are from and what are your experiences, but it's important that we do the best that we can to vote. The third reason that came up was that most people are not informed enough about the candidates and the issues. So thank God for the internet. You could go and do your research, and find out about what the people are talking about, what they believe about, and see how that suits you. Another reason that they gave is that they said sometimes they're just not inspired by any candidate, or any issue. So they choose not to vote. And finally, some people don't want to vote because of privacy and security issues. So those are the common reasons why people have said they do not want to vote. However, we want to encourage everyone here to vote and to encourage others to vote. For these reasons, we're going to talk about. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is exercising your right to vote. And I thought we use that word all the time. So I went to research. What is the meaning of the word exercise? Definition. The best definition I found in the Cambridge dictionary, it says exercise is to do some physical activities for your body to be stronger and healthy. And I thought, wow. So then I thought to myself, okay, so guess what? We could simply just say exercising your vote could simply be physical activities that you would do for your nation to make your nation stronger and healthier. And then the word that really caught me was the word activities. So which means the voting is just one of them, but there are other activities, plural, a chain of things, a chain of actions that we have to take for us to boldly say we have exercised our right to vote. We just can't do that one thing on that day, which is good, but that's the icing on the cake. There are other things, because exercise means physical activities, plural. So there are other things that we need to do, which brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about with she voters. I say she voters because I'm talking about us women voters. And I talk about the Esther approach versus the whisper effect. And we all know the story about Queen Esther. But the reason why I use the word approach, because Queen Esther, when it came to her nation, there were actions, physical actions that she took to ensure that the right laws were put in place to save her people. Okay, so she took an approach as opposed to the woman Rizpah, who you could read more about her in 2 Samuel chapter 21. She instead, her own, I said the Rizpah effect, and we're going to talk about her story. Esther, what did she do? We're talking about exercising your vote, and we said exercise is physical activities, plural. What did she do? She fasted. She went to seek the face of God. 3 days and 3 nights she fasted to get direction, to get favor, to get courage, to approach a king, a leader that was thoughtless, who was ruthless, who was impulsive, who was oppressing, and even agreed for the destruction of our people. There are some leaders that we have in power, in history, in this nation and in other countries that fit that description. And sometimes it's going to take a series of activities prior to the day that we go to cast that vote to get those situations to change. And that's what Esther did. And if we don't do like Esther, then we leave ourselves in a position where we will have to end up with the Rizpah effect. Effect here meaning that we are dealing now with the consequences of actions. You see, in one situation, in Esther's situation, we are approaching the matter, we are taking control over our destinies by the actions that we take. In the other situation, we are dealing with the effect of what is happening. In the case of Rizpah, it's a sad story that many people might not have come across in the Bible, but she was one of King Saul's wives, and Saul was another leader who was deranged and thoughtless, impulsive, vindictive, insecure, you name it. And she was his wife. But unlike Esther, the Bible doesn't tell us that she took some approach to try to fix this problem. And what happened was that in his reign, he made so many wrong decisions that put Israel, the nation of Israel, in a bad place. And even after his death, his decisions came and haunted his family. And what did she do? Her children, in fact, Saul's lineage was wiped out because of his decisions, including she lost 2 sons. And the Bible said she went to a rock around where their bodies were hanging after her sons had been killed, and she spread a cloth. And the Bible said she stayed there day and night to shush off the vultures and the wild animals so that they shouldn't come and eat the corpses of her children. And some versions of the Bible say she did that for 5 months. But did that bring her children back? No. Did that reverse the damage that Saul had done in the nation of Israel? No. So think about this. The Esther approach, one lady fasted 3 days and 3 nights. She went without food. I know it wasn't convenient. If you've ever done it, it's not convenient. It's not easy. She changed history and changed the destiny of a race of people. Another woman did nothing prior while she had the opportunity. And she took action now when there was the effect. So if we don't use the Esther approach, then we force ourselves to do the RISPA effect. That is, for how long are we going to continue to build shrines and monuments for our children whose lives were taken out, whose bodies were perforated with bullets? It didn't need to be that way. Whose blood was flowed on the tar on the road and pavements? For how long are we going to be there making monuments like RISPA for our children who lay down on the ground, whose skin was bruised as they struggled on the hard, unyielding pavement to breathe as the weight of someone else's body was on them? For how long are we going to do that? We need to take the Esther approach. Do what you need to do now, a series of activities that you need to do now, and then top it up with going out there and registering and then putting your vote. Those two things should be toward the end, but should not be the all of what we do. So, and I want to talk about we she voters. We must realize that we determine and create the future. And in this situation, we have another lady whom many people don't talk about in the Bible, Jael, and she was also a woman, a common woman. She had no military training. In fact, nobody had said anything about her. But God used this woman to eliminate the one person who was a terror in Israel. And how did she do it? You know, sometimes we are talking here and some of us may be sitting and saying, well, I'm not even a leader in my political party and I'm just a housewife, or I'm just a mother, or yes, okay, now I'm a peace ambassador or whatever. What I'm telling you is we are now peace ambassadors. We have been empowered. But what I'm saying is a woman who was not even a peace ambassador, who was a housewife, she took out the threat that was posed to her nation. She did this purely by doing an activity that she had always done and took for granted. In Israel at the time, the women were the ones who would pitch the tent. And she had done this over and over, pitching the tent where they would live. And I'm sure she had gotten better, upper body strength. She knew how to do one slam and get it done. And that was what she used to eliminate this threat. The question is, what series of activities do you have planned to take control over our destiny, to make our voices heard? And finally, I want to say, we she voters, we have a moral responsibility to humanity. Our vote is not only about us. Our vote is about our children. We're speaking for them. Our vote is about humanity. Why? Because in many countries, 50 to 54% of the population is women. So basically, when you vote for anyone who is going to put laws to help women, you are actually voting for someone who is going to help 53 to 54% of that population. In a few countries, even the female population is as high as 55 to 57%. Now, in the United States of America, the population here for female population is 50.8%. So guess what? When you vote for someone, or you take a series of actions, you exercise your vote for someone who puts laws for women, you are actually doing your moral responsibility to humanity. And guess what else? In the United States of America, there are 22 million, roughly, about children in single homes. And out of that 22 million, about 19 are in homes with single mothers. So if you don't fight for laws that will help single mothers, what are you doing? You are not only disenfranchising those mothers, you are disenfranchising those 19 million children whose mothers have to struggle and face all kinds of obstacles. So we must exercise our right to vote. And exercising means do a series of physical activities to strengthen our nation and to keep it healthy. What are your activities? What are your activities that you have chosen? It cannot just be, it's good to register, it's good to go and vote on that day. There must be something. You must be taking the Esther approach right now. Fasting, praying, seeking God's face, finding out who is God's choice, so that you vote with God and so that you help women and indirectly help humanity. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Dr. Beauque. Such a powerful, powerful presentation, bringing in the spiritual examples as well for women and how to approach our right to exercise, activity, and to strengthen our communities as well as our nations. Thank you so very much. Well, I'm excited because I'm just really full, but I will say this before I turn it back over to our host, that I hope that all of us on this Zoom meeting tonight have recognized that each and every one of us are women of faith. And the presentations that we heard tonight came also from women of faith. So that means, again, we've seen the spiritual side and the importance, and also the natural sides of taking action and exercising our right to vote. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to go ahead and turn the program back over to our hostess with the mostest, Her Excellency, Dr. Marjanita Ripley.
All right, all right. Awesome, awesome. What a tremendous night we've had. I tell you, it's been very informative. And I just want to say, on behalf of Dr. Philip Finn and the Leadership and Women's Affairs Department of ICC of WOLMI, we would like to thank all of you and all the participants that are on this Zoom tonight, as we know what to do, how important it is to vote, to register to vote, and the power in your vote. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said this about voting. He said, our lives began to end the day we became silent about the things that really matter. He also said, voting is a foundation stone for political action. So we don't want to silence our voice, but we want to go out and vote. Faith without works is dead, being alone. And because it's our right, as well as our responsibility to vote, we have to do just that. We want to thank our phenomenal speakers this evening. Also, we thank God for Dr. Philip Finn, the president of WOLMI, and his vision, sharing that for global impact and the greetings he brought to us. Also, Dr. Sharon Pacato Finn for an outstanding presentation about women, about voting. I tell you what, we know how important it is to vote. And also, Dr. Sharon, thank you for helping to host our meeting this evening. You've been a most gracious host. And Dr. Beauque Barnley, who's the Deputy Director of Leadership and Women's Affairs. What an awesome job. I tell you what, we know how to register to vote, and also we know about our right to vote and how we should exercise that right. So Dr. April Ripley, thank you for hosting. You've been a tremendous host, as always. We appreciate you. And if my husband is on, I want to acknowledge Dr. Joseph Ripley and all of the members from the churches, the business world. Thank you for joining us tonight. And our prayer is that we will put action to our faith. We'll go out and register to vote. We'll vote, and we'll make a difference, because there's power in your vote, and never forget that. And it's important that you vote. It's your right, but it's also your responsibility. Let account for the ability that God has given us. So whatever country you're in, the principle is, don't be silent, but make your vote count. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. Do we have time for questions? Maybe you can unmute your line. and tell us your name and ask. We might have time for a couple of questions if you should have those. So you can unmute at the bottom left.
Yeah, they're actually, everyone is muted. It's the system that I have it all set.
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
at this time, there are no questions, just excellent congratulatory for a very well motivational presentation. Everyone was very informative. It promoted them and boosted them to take action to vote. For those who are residing in countries where voting is acceptable, and for those where there's still the challenge, it gives them insight on how the effect of voting really does affect the government and what is their purpose as a citizen to the voting process. So there are no questions at this time.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sharon. I appreciate that, because I'm sure the presentations were so tremendous that we don't have any questions. They were very informative. Again, I want to thank all of our speakers, and thank you, Dr. Sharon, and thank all of you. And we'll have dismissal by Dr. Sharon Pacato Finn. God bless and thank all of you. Dr. Sharon.
Yes, so let's close with a word of prayer. Dear God and Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us the insight of those who came before us and stood the test of time, even for the assignment you had for them here on the earth. Lord, I thank you for strengthening us women, that as we have been informed and gained the knowledge of insight, we know that past history, current history, and the future is in our hands. Thank you for giving us the courage to go as women, to take action and vote. Lord, let our vote not also be on the earth, but as in heaven, as you instruct us and lead us by your Spirit. So, Lord, I thank you for the Women's and Leadership Department, that you continue to give them insight, more ideas, creative ideas, leader sharpening leaders, and equipping us for where you actually have us to go. We give you praise and thanks. We thank you for the founder, the visionary, Dr. Finn, for enlightening him. We thank you for the board of directors that form part, that as a council they come together, and that the wisdom of God will flow through and then through us. We give you all the praise and all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Dr. Marjanita?
Good night.
Well, that's it. It's been a wonderful evening. We give God the glory, and we thank God for, again, you for being participating, and God bless you all. Love you.